Hey, good afternoon, everyone. How are you guys? Okay, so it's Wednesday, it's past midweek, and the weekend is drawing near. So thank you for coming. At least we have some time of sharing. But really, I didn't want this to be a too serious talk. Really, it's also for us to share and learn from each other. Just maybe as a start, from a scale of 1 to 10, just put up your fingers, okay? How familiar are you with AIC? From 1 to 10. Can I see fingers? Ooh, I got 8. Oh, I got 10. Here, leh? One hand, mostly one. Oh, not bad. Okay, well, at least we did more marketing. Okay, and then the second question, from a scale of 1 to 10, how familiar are you with the ILTC sector? 2, 5. Oh, very good. 5. Here, leh? 8. Wow. Okay, so the 8 ones can just go outside for tea break. And then the 2 and below ones can stay. Okay, so today I'm just going to talk a little bit about AIC and what we do for the ILTC sector. Hello. cannot be so bad and hello people who... and I call it thrills and spills because actually AIC has only been set up for 7 years. And actually throughout this period, it was a bit of experimentation. Some things worked, some things didn't work. But actually, because the sector is a very nice sector, they forgive us when things don't work. But when things work, actually we celebrate together. So that has been actually a very good experience for us in a learning journey about the LTC sector. But maybe a bit about AIC. We were formed, as I said, 7 years ago, and then this term called National Care Integrator came out, right, from then Minister Khaw Boon Wan and said, you are the National Care Integrator. So we say, okay, good. But actually, we didn't really know what it means. And shall we say, actually, maybe we still don't really know what it means. But our traditional role has always been to be sort of the irritating people that the ward nurses have to make sure the integrated referral management system is keyed in properly before the referral goes into the ILTC service that's needed by the patient. So we've always played that middleman role actually as far back as 1992 when we were called the Care Liaison Service within the Ministry of Health. So people who needed continuing care after a hospital episode had to go to this place called Care Liaison Service and then find a match for a nursing home bed for the patient, right, that was going to be discharged. And then as you know, clustering happened, we were spun off. Actually, we were closed down for a while, so sad. But the good thing was we were revived very quickly because it soon became quite untenable because all the different hospitals were eyeing similar nursing home beds. So actually the nursing home perspective was quite difficult for them when different hospitals were saying, I may have a patient discharged today, can I chope a bed? So between the two biggies, the Sing Health and National Healthcare Group at that time, they said, okay, we put money together and start the integrated care service, which basically was the clearinghouse for referrals from hospitals to long-term care services. And in 2009, at that time, the Ministry of Health thought about it and said, maybe we need to be a bit more serious about aging population and the strain that it will put on our healthcare infrastructure and services. And then they said, let's form an agency largely from the Integrated Care Service, and say let's form an agency called Agency for Integrated Care. They are the people who do referrals to long-term care service. Presumably they know a bit about long-term care service, and maybe then we also add certain roles for them. And those two roles were really to grow the primary and the long-term care services sector, and also then to work with different partners within the healthcare system to say, how are we going to prepare ourselves for the demands of the aging population? And that was sort of our terms of reference when we started. I can't say that we were very clear what we were supposed to do, so it was a bit of a bumbling along, but I will show you a little bit about what we have done and maybe what is a bit clearer to us now. I showed you this picture because, and I wanted to ask whether at that time this was a fair picture of our healthcare system. And you notice that largely it is very acute care dominated. The hospitals are big, well known to people, reputable to our citizens for care. And then the primary care, quite a small component. There's the polyclinics, which are well known, and then the GPs. And in the intermediate and long-term care sector, actually it's a much smaller sector. And when patients have to move from acute care back to long-term care sector or from primary care to acute care, the movements are not always that smooth. And this is the sort of the reason why AIC was formed, and this is the picture we started with to say, how can we arrive at a better balance of the three care sectors, and how can we work at the transitions between the care services. So as I said, we are the irritating people that make you fill up the referral management forms, and that to us really is something that is important actually for the long-term care service, and I'll explain a little bit about why. But as a national referral agency, all subsidized care to ILTC come through AIC, right? Unlike the hospital system, the ILTC sector is not, access to ILTC service is gate capped. Means if you want a subsidy, you actually have to go through a means test and a needs assessment, right? Whereas in a hospital, you've turned out at the ED, you actually can qualify for subsidies and depending on the choice of class of wards you choose. But ILTC is a bit different because you have to come through a needs assessment and a means test assessment. And part of our role is really to sort out between the many services that Xiaowei showed you just now and the many disparate players located all over Singapore where the patient should best be placed. And that's why a national clearinghouse for patients seeking ILTC services was useful. In the past, when we were shut down temporarily, what we understand was that hospitals were chopping beds, like nursing home beds, basically, and telling the nursing homes, reserve it for me, I may need it, but that may or may not happen. And then the nursing home bed may or may not be filled that day. So as National Clearinghouse, we have a central wait list, a national wait list for nursing home beds, and then we move patients who come into the nursing home beds that get freed up. And in a way, we are a neutral party. So as a neutral party, now that there are 6 clusters, we act as the intermediary between the 6 clusters and the whole ILTC sector. So what is the ILTC sector? Largely, we will group them into the 3 buckets, or the many services that Xiaowei pointed out. Largely, we see them as one chunk on your right, the residential care services. So I've just put nursing home care here because that's sort of more known to people. But actually within that sector, community hospitals where Boon Yao come from and inpatient hospices would be where we sort of classify them. And then patients who don't go into a residential care service or the institution would be able to go home. For bed-bound patients, it means they can't get out of their house to seek care. They would then receive home care where the care comes to them into their homes. And usually when the bed-bound person is at home, then there will be a caregiver who sees to his day-to-day needs. For more ambulant clients, when they get discharged from hospital and they can move about and can get out to seek care, they actually go to a center-based care service. This could be a rehab service. This could be a daycare where the caregiver needs to go to work, but you need somebody to look after your loved one when you are at work. So daycare is really similar to what we have maybe for childcare, where you put your elderly person there, and the people within the center take care of them while you go about doing your work. Within center-based care service, there are a whole gamut. There's the rehab part. There's also dementia daycare. There's social daycare. There's day hospice, where end-of-life patients go to a center. And I put in brackets senior activity centers because they function as sort of centers, but they are in this divide within the social part of the equation. So they're part of the MSF family and not the MOH family. So it's really not one sector. There are many services. There are 140 over entities within the sector. And I say depending on how you count, because some have relationships where there's a main body and then they have various nursing homes under them. Some individuals stand alone. So depending on how you count, 140, 160, whichever. But actually it's a very diverse sector. The sector, another way sort of to cut the sector and to say how do we sort of look at them is there are quite a number of faith-based sectors. Services, organizations, right? So there are the Christian groups, there's the Buddhist groups, there's actually a Muslim nursing home or from a Muslim organization. There are also the non-faith-based, and a lot of these started because a certain community saw the need on the ground, and they saw that certain needs were not met. And they started mainly to support their congregation and their own community, but then gradually they expanded that to also serve other people from other faiths. So you see that many of them have actually quite long history, and there are two which are set up actually by law. So you will find that, from the British, they had to create an ordinance or an act today, and they set up two of them, and I won't tell you which ones. There's one just next door. So very strange, right? You can't close them down. If you close them down, you must go and repeal the law. And then the other one is one of them on the slides. Do you all know which one is the other one? That there's actually a law that sets it up. Any guesses? So they are quite old, and actually there's an act that sets up Kwong Wai Shiu Hospital. But actually, secretly, it's a nursing home, it's not a hospital. But don't tell them that. Another way to sort of look at the sector is also to look at the types of composition, right? And actually, in primary care and in acute care or hospital care, the public sector, right? Most of you come from the public healthcare family. The public sector is involved. So we've got polyclinics that do primary care. We've got hospitals, public hospitals. But the long-term care sector, actually, the public sector is a very new entrant. We are maybe about a year and a half or 2 years old in only the nursing home part. So you see, in the center-based and home-based care sector, largely VWO-driven, so voluntary welfare organizations. In home care, this is the number of providers, meaning that there are about 1/3 of them are VWO providers, the other 2/3 are private providers. But in terms of load, actually, the VWO take up more than 90% of the load. The private providers are all very small, right? 1 to 2 sort of nurses operation, the largest being 4 or 5. And then recently there's been a few new entrants. And in nursing homes, actually we've seen a much larger share of private capacity. But over the years, MOH has very cleverly tapped into the private capacity, and we call this the portable subsidy scheme, where instead of MOH building nursing homes with the VWOs and creating subsidized beds, they buy the bed from the private provider, like an Econ or Orange Valley next door, and they pay them to care for subsidized patients. We have only one nursing home today that is in the public sector, and that's called Vanguard in Pearls Hill near the Outram area. And that will grow slightly, but this is actually a very new development. So in public healthcare, we've not always been very familiar with the ILTC sector, the issues with it, what are the challenges of running it, including the costs that actually we take to run it. The sector is also very diverse in terms of size. We have small nursing homes as small as 16 beds, and then nursing homes, there's the single site one, the biggest one, which will start probably next year, will be Kwong Wai Shiu with 622 beds. And then the largest multi-site nursing home, meaning that they are a group, right? Econ and Orange Valley are groups. They have many nursing homes across the island. The largest ones have about 1,000 beds. So they are really very different in terms of where they are in scale, the approach, the economies of scale, the staff structure, and also the resources that they have. Right? So this is sort of the sector we have to think about how we engage and how we work with them to grow the ILTC sector. But largely, as you know, a lot of our patients, after they get discharged from hospitals, need continuing care. So this is just a slide to sort of show you where they go from hospitals. And any guesses for the hospital that has the highest referral numbers out to long-term care? Which hospital? I thought all very competitive one. Which hospital has the highest referrals out? Huh? Tan Tock Seng. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. I got nothing new to share with you. So Tan Tock Seng is the highest. I mean, the population is oldest within Singapore, and many of them do need continuing care after they leave the hospital. You will see that actually not that many patients get referred to nursing homes, and actually that's deliberate. We do, as a matter of preference, would like people to age at their own homes if possible, and only when it's absolutely critical and not possible, then we offer a nursing home option. Nursing homes are also capped by the natural supply. There's just not that many nursing home beds that we can actually facilitate patients to be referred to nursing homes. The other large referral source that we're looking at actually is not from hospitals. The other large referral source is in a way the chapalang, the not hospital source, meaning they come from polyclinics, they come from the community, they can come from the community hospitals, for example. And we're seeing that that actually has become the second largest source of referral after Tan Tock Seng. So I think we're also seeing that as AIC, we're seeing that actually not all patients, a large group of patients will need continuing care after an acute episode, but there will be many more frail people out in the community, accessing primary care, accessing other care services out there that actually will now need continuing care as well. In 2009, when we started, when we looked at the long-term care sector, I mean, these were sort of our own understanding of where things were. There wasn't enough capacity. There were quite long waiting lists for nursing homes and actually for center-based care and home care. And we also realized that it was getting harder and harder to place patients, especially when patients are much older. They have many more chronic issues than they had before. And in a way, hospitals were also discharging patients earlier because of the bed crunch. In terms of quality, we didn't have a national standard of care. We have pockets of excellence within the ILTC sector, but the quality and the variability was actually quite evident. Not everybody knew and understood what ILTC sector was. Some patients, when they crossed into the ILTC sector, sort of expected a hospital-level service, and then, of course, got very disappointed and then wrote a lot of complaint letters. Job seekers also didn't see ILTC sector necessarily as where they aspire, right, to work in. And, of course, at that time, MOH, AIC, actually, we didn't have that many links to the long-term care sector, and even the hospitals were not that well networked. And since then, there has been quite a lot of effort by MOH, by the hospitals, the regional health systems, and AIC, and we've been able to work with the sector a lot more, understand a lot more of their needs, and actually work to help grow this sector. In terms of both capacity, in 2012, the Minister of Health came out and announced the 2020 master plan, and then he said we will build X number of nursing home beds, X number of home care places and center-based care, and AIC then started working very hard with the sector to try to get some of this capacity up. But a lot more resources also flowed into the long-term care sector, and there was greater recognition that there is a unique skill set within the ILTC sector that we need to hone and develop as our population age. So a lot more training opportunities happen, a lot more scholarships and study awards also came to the ILTC sector. And of course, we're very proud that we also have our share of president's nurses, right? As much as the public sector is proud of your own nurses. Of course, you have many more than the ILTC sector, but over time, hopefully, we'll be able also to profile some of the good work that the people do within the sector. In terms of quality, this year the nursing home standards came into force, and this was an industry-led effort to come up with the standards that they would hold themselves to. And they had 1 year to prepare for it, and this year it came to force. And the home and center-based care providers also came together to say, let us have some guidelines to help ourselves measure against the guidelines and see how we can improve to meet them. And there's been a lot more attention in the news, in the media about the ILT sector. So I'm quite glad the average rating seems to be 4, 5, 6. Maybe about 7 years ago, that would have been much less. But people understanding that long-term care services are suitable for them actually is quite, for us it's still quite a challenge. Many of them do ask which one is the correct service. Many of the names in the long-term care services are quite difficult to understand. So that navigation and the understanding is also not quite intuitive. In terms of sector development, AIC plays 4 key roles, and I'll just quickly talk through them. I think one role, as you see, the sector is very diverse, many small, big, different types of players, but AIC can play the role as an aggregator. And one of the first things that we did was to try to just pull all the information about the different care providers, what services they had, opening hours, fees. They are still a bit shy to put into a website called Silver Pages. And then we wanted that Silver Pages to be a comprehensive listing of all elder care services, so that a person who actually, has a loved one who suddenly needs a long-term care service actually can go there and get a bit of a primer about ILTC. So I'll invite you to have a look at the Silver Pages if you haven't done so. It has a navigator where you can also pick the location, and you will be able to see the care services near that location. For training, we also could act as an aggregator. Individually, the long-term care service providers may not have enough number of staff, may not have enough volume to go and do their own training or curriculum development, so they latch on to different training programs, not quite contextualized to the ILTC sector. So the other thing that we did was to try to pool the needs together, and we can start a class about ILTC nursing, or we can start a class about speaking in dialect with older persons, for example. Because the different care providers will send their staff to the Learning Institute, and with the whole sector, we have enough volume to be able to do that. And shared procurement is something that the public sector already did, so we just copied it, and we asked the nursing homes, for example, can we standardize your diapers needs? Okay, not your diapers needs, your residents' diapers needs, and then then let's order it together, and then you don't have to manage inventory within each of your nursing homes. We'll have somebody to help do that. And Siang Health has been very supportive, and in fact, the Siang Health Group Purchasing Office, the GPO, is the one that helps us do all these purchasing. So we're very grateful for that collaboration. As sector developer, we also share risks with the sector when we know that there are issues placing certain types of patients who are not as sick to go into a nursing home, but not well enough to go home entirely. Can we come up with an intermediate care model between the two, so that they are not forced to go to a nursing home because there's no alternative in between? So when we come up with new care models, we work with the sector, and we try to find money, and we have been quite fortunate in being able to find money from different sources, and to bring that and to share that risk with the ILTC provider to start new services. We see ourselves also as an advocate for patients needing long-term care services, and by extension also to the sector. So one of the things the sector really hates, and if you ever work with anybody in the sector, please do not call them step-down care. That was the old term, but really it's a reflection that actually the ILTC care service is an important service to a group of patients who need that, and it's not just a step down from the hospital. But MOH has also been very active in reviewing the affordability of long-term care services, so there were means testing reviews and subsidy reviews. And one of the things that I'll talk a little bit about was the bill-own-lease model for nursing homes, which is quite innovative. One of our roles also as sector developer will be to bring the players together. As I said, they're all quite different. They start with different faiths. They may have different philosophies of care, different quality standards. And we bring them together annually for a work plan seminar where MOH comes to share a bit of their priorities. We also do our own sort of a D&D for the sector, because individually they can be quite small, right? And they may not have their own D&D, but we do a D&D for the whole sector. And we set up two committees that are sector-led. One is manpower, given that that is a very important resource for the sector, and the other is quality improvement. And I'll talk a bit more about quality in a while. I wanted to just share a little bit about what we have learned along the years. I think one of the difficult things about being in the middle, right? And Margaret Thatcher said that, never stand in the middle of the road, right? Because if you're always sitting in the middle of the road, then you get knocked down by both sides. And in a way, AIC as a referral agency sits between the hospital, who needs to discharge the patient for very good reasons, and the nursing home, who actually want to really think about whether they are able to manage the patients. And this is a natural tension actually everywhere we see, everywhere around the world. So it's not unique to us, and it's not because of AIC. The hospital, is fast churn, right? I mean, you have beds, you have sicker patients coming in. But for nursing homes, as I said, they actually don't think in days, right? Much like hospitals do. They actually think in months, and actually sometimes in years, right? Because when you take over a patient, you really want to say, I'll be able to care for him until he dies. This is his new home, right? And if I can't manage the patient, he has to leave the home, then as a nursing home provider, I don't feel like I've done what I could for the patient. So there's a lot of thinking about how do I provide the correct life for him until he passes on. And this is one of the continuous struggles that we have. So if you continuously feel that, you know, nursing homes are hesitant and all that, it's, to me, actually quite natural. And it is also what we can then start to do to understand the constraints within the nursing homes and then to offer them certain help that will make them more confident to take over some of the patients. And some of the things that have been happening at the regional health system level are quite encouraging. What nursing homes need sometimes is a confidence in terms of, if the patient is too ill, can somebody guide me how to manage the patient, right? If I have a doctor to be able to call or a nurse to be able to call in, I will feel a lot more confident taking in the patient. So some of these things that are happening at the RHS level actually assure the nursing home that when they take over the patient, it's not just their pasa anymore, right? They didn't take over a hot potato. They take over somebody, and there's some shared care support within the two. The other thing that when we started, we thought, you know, much like in public healthcare, we provide resources, the sector will all throw out their hands and say, yes, you know, we love it, we will expand. And actually what we found is that the philosophy and the thinking and the language within the ILT sector is quite different. For them, personal care, person-centric care, high-touch care is why they started. And some of them, for 100 over years, they believe in providing that sort of care. And to ask them then to expand to 300 beds, 400 beds, you know, whether they will lose their personal touch, whether they will know the residents by name, know their preferences in the morning, what will irk them if they don't do this before breakfast, and they feel that they lose some parts of their mission. So what we also found out was that when we worked with them on capacity expansion, we needed to also listen to them and to try to find ways to work with them to think through how they won't lose that mission focus even though they expand. And I must say that many of them have come up with quite a number of innovative things to be able to maintain that personal touch, the understanding of their patients and the residents, and yet, you know, be able to grow larger. Of course, financial issues are always there. VWOs are not motivated by financial incentives, so you can throw them money, but they will say, you know, I don't work for money, I work for God. All right? And you know, even though you give them the money, they will say, you know, thank you very much, but I will raise my own charity dollar to cover the extra parts of the philosophy of care that traditional MOH will not fund, right? And actually, because they came into this sort of service not from a, you know, pure money perspective, but they came in because they serve a community need. And they really see that, you know, this is what we need to provide for the patient and the resident, you know. So if you won't pay for bereavement support, we will raise charity dollar to do it. If you won't pay for outings for our residents, you know, you only pay for the care part because that is the official health part. We will find ways to get our volunteers to organize themselves, raise funds, bring them to Gardens by the Bay so that the seniors have a day out and feel that they are still connected to developments within the city. So we have had quite a lot of challenges working with them on capacity, but a lot of learning lessons. But one of the things that have actually made a lot of difference was the new bill-own-lease model from MOH. Now, from the public sector healthcare, you would know that when you build a new hospital, the hospital is provided for by MOH. So you don't need to think about paying 10% of the hospital cost, right, which would have been exorbitant anyway. But in the ILTC sector, that has always been the approach. Government will fund 90%, you pay 10%. If you don't like, you pay 100%, right, which is worse, right? But the bill-own-lease model then, only in 2012, then we came around to say ILTC facilities are important as well for our aging population. So government will pay for the infrastructure, the providers will come in and operate. And that has made a lot of difference in terms of being able to scale up and in terms of confidence of providers to say, okay, I will still raise my charity dollar to cover the co-payments that the patients cannot pay or the philosophy of care I want to do, but at least I don't have to worry about the building. In terms of quality, I think we also realized that what worked well at the start, you know, we copied whatever we could. Hand hygiene worked very well. It's something common across the different care sectors. And, you know, they came on board and they said, we will measure hand hygiene, we will put in a basin here because, you know, this is important for us when we come out from the ward, you know, this will help us wash our hands. Satisfaction surveys, they started a little bit ginger because they weren't sure what we were measuring. They also weren't sure whether, the results we published, they will look not so good. But I must say that there has now been a very healthy participation rate for nursing homes. We've also worked with the community hospitals for patient safety culture surveys, and we're rolling out satisfaction surveys for center-based care, home care, Meals on Wheels, and other services. And really, I think they've gotten into an understanding that these are really baseline data for them to work on improvements. What did not work so well, actually, we had thought falls prevention quite clear. We should just have falls prevention, no falls within a nursing home. But then we get into the conundrum, right? That in a nursing home, that's the person's new home. And the example here, Mr. Lim has a falls risk, but he wants to get out of his own bed. He wants to feel independent. He wants to make his own cup of tea if he can, right? And so you have to then struggle between him being a false risk or whether you allow him to lead the life that whatever remaining amount of years he has as an independent person. So really some of these things we still don't have a good answer. We still grapple with how much of the quality of care do we focus on, the safety, and how much of the quality of life, which comes with certain risks, do we allow the residents or the patients to have. Another new thing that some of the nursing homes are trying out is to let their residents wear their own clothes. So you don't wear a pink color for women and blue color for men in the nursing home, and the same clothes as everybody else, which really looks like an institution. And this is something that we're trying out and we're piloting. But actually when we go to other countries, they all already do that in the developed countries. But it is a mindset change as well for us to allow them to wear their own clothes. Beyond capacity, capability, and quality, I think the next stage is really about integration. We have sort of built out all this capacity over the years. We work with them on capability and quality, but actually it's about the integration between the three care sectors. And I'll just show you some of the pictures of what life is like in a home. Right? So within the hospital, of course, sterile, very nice, things are organized for you. But when they get home, they get even more medicines from you, right? Add on to their TCM one, plus the GP one, plus the polyclinic one, plus whatever else they save. Expire already, you also can keep. But this is sort of the state of some of their homes, right? And really, if you want to think about quality across the continuum of care, it is not just worrying about the hospital end, but actually thinking about, after he leaves the hospital, what is going to keep him well at home. And a lot of the work that we do with home care and social care, and then thinking about supported discharge, is to think about how to support them better at home. So we are now trying to piece together the capacity that we have built up and try to link the different services up to be much more intuitive to the clients. The ultimate goal is really how can we try to make home the preferred care setting for people rather than to choose a nursing home. Nursing home actually is very attractive, right? Because everything is provided for you. Don't have to cook, don't have to wake up yourself, somebody will wake you up. Don't have to shower yourself for some of them who cannot shower. But home is actually quite complicated if you're a caregiver, right? You have to arrange for you have to almost stop work. You have to arrange for the meals. You have to take care. And then when a person has dementia, actually it is very challenging. But how do we increase our support so that more of us, actually when we age, will be able to age in our homes? And the plan really is to try to see whether we can balance out the three care sectors and work on the edges between the care sectors and to try to improve the integration. So I'll just leave you with some thoughts. As AIC, we have supported some projects and progress of integration, but we've not really gone or found a formula that actually will lead to better integration of care for our clients. But I think as a start, really, it starts from individuals and it starts from care professionals that touch our patients. And these are some questions that I thought that as care professionals, it's important to ask when a client comes to us in an episode, actually how much of his care journey do we know before he came to us, and actually what's going to happen in his care journey after. And if we ask these questions, I think it does help us to think a little bit about how to provide that continuing care for him in a more seamless manner. At the same level, how well do we know the partners that actually cared for the patient before they came to us? And how well do we know the partners when they leave us? And I think this is the regional health system level of work that we would be very interested to work with you on. if we know the partners well, we know their capabilities, we know what they have done for the patients or what they cannot do for the patients, then we'll be able to try to create a more seamless journey for him. And of course, I would encourage all of you to spend some time in the ILT sector. Many of you have great skills that ILT sector would love to have. Spend some time with them, and also you can then discover actually not just their constraints and challenges, but also the joy that they have. Because when they hold the patient for months and years, they really get to know them in persons, and they really get to be able to see them and try to partner with them in their journey. And that journey unfortunately ends usually in a death, but hopefully in a good death. And this is something that I take my hat off to many of the ILTC workers, to be able to go into a home, not knowing actually how the home will be, not knowing also whether there will be somebody, a family member who may be in a home. Actually, for a female nurse to be able to do that, I actually take my hat off to them, and also to the palliative care staff working in the sector. So if you have the time, I would greatly encourage you to find an LTC provider and actually spend a day there or work on some voluntary work there. And I think you will find that very meaningful and enriching too. Okay, thank you very much.